Many in the international community believe that the West Bank is illegally occupied by the State of Israel. In this 7-part series, we examine this assumption and will determine what international law has to say about it. In addition to relying on relevant legal precedents, treaties, and customary international law, beginning with the formative historic events of the early 20th century, our analysis is based on the authoritative legal treaties on the subject, the legal foundation and borders of Israel under international law, by legal scholar Howard Grief. In Part 3 of this series, we discussed the most important legal and political events that took place after the Mandate period up to the end of the Six-Day War. Now, in Part 4, we will briefly discuss the meaning of the term Palestinian. In the foundational legal documents of the era in which the Jewish sovereign legal title to the land of Israel or Palestine was being laid down, the question is, was the term Palestinian used, and if it was used, to whom did it refer? First, the Balfour Declaration of November 2nd, 1917. It declared that the Jewish national home should be established in Palestine. Second, Palestine was created in international law in the San Remo Resolution of April the 24th, 25th, 1920, to be the Jewish national home. Now, basic common sense would dictate that just as citizens of Canada are called Canadians, or citizens of Brazil are called Brazilians, the citizens of Palestine should be called Palestinians? But that would mean the Jews, right? But just so we don't rely on common sense, and since that sounds pretty bizarre, let's dig a little deeper. Article 129 of the Treaty of Sèvres of August 10, 1920, stated that Palestinian citizenship would be given to Jews who were resident of Palestine. Further, Article 126 of the same treaty allowed Arabs to move to countries which had an Arab majority and obtain citizenship there, but they weren't allowed to move to Palestine and obtain citizenship there. Why not? Because Palestine was earmarked for the Jewish people. But this really wasn't much of a problem for the Arabs, since there were many countries in which they could receive citizenship if they wanted, including the Hejaz, which later became Saudi Arabia, Syria and the Lebanon, and Mesopotamia, which eventually became Iraq. Further, Article 7 of the Mandate for Palestine of July the 24th, 1922, bound the British to facilitate the acquisition of Palestinian citizenship by Jews who take up their permanent residence in Palestine. And let's be clear, the Mandate for Palestine did not confer this right upon Arabs living outside of Palestine. So, to summarize so far, Jews were allowed to immigrate to Palestine and become citizens, but Arabs were not. Now, this may seem a little strange to our ears today, but it was pretty normal practice before 1948 to refer to Jews who lived in the land of Israel as Palestinians. For example, the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra of today used to be called the Palestine Philharmonic Orchestra. The Jerusalem Post of today used to be called the Palestine Post, and so on. So how did a name which was used in international law to refer to the Jewish national home become popularized as an Arab ethnic and national term? Historically, you probably already know that the term Palestine was the name given by the Romans to the ancient land of Israel in the year 136 of the Common Era to disconnect the Jewish people from their land. Unfortunately, almost 1800 years later, it was chosen to be the name of the country created by the principal Allied powers of World War I, to be the Jewish national home. But when the Jewish people declared independence, they changed the name of their country from Palestine to the State of Israel. And as a result, from 1948 onward, the term Palestine fell into disuse. And that would have been the end of the story had it not been for the PLO, the so-called Palestine Liberation Organization. a terrorist organization founded to destroy the Jewish state in Palestine. Essentially, it was they that hijacked the term Palestine and made it refer to a so-called homeland of the so-called Palestinian Arab people. To prove the point, Article 1 of the PLO Charter of May 28, 1964 states categorically Palestine is the homeland of the Arab Palestinian people. Now this may be some sort of nice rhetoric, but it really has no standing in international law. Why not? Because it conflicts with international law. Article 2 correctly acknowledges that Palestine's borders during the period of the Mandate are the legitimate, indivisible borders of Palestine. That's good. And yet, the Charter then goes on and completely repudiates that very mandate in Article 20 when it states the following: the Balfour Declaration, the mandate for Palestine, and everything that has been based on them are deemed null and void. Now how's that for being illogical? Further, Article 6 does not define when the Zionist invasion took place, but it clearly states that the term Palestinian is not a racial term, but rather a national one, because even they admit that Jews can be Palestinians. So let's focus on this last point a little further. The term Palestinian is technically both an anthropological or ethnological term to refer to a people, but it is also a legal term to refer to the individual, to a citizen. And under international law, both of these concepts coalesce together in the Jewish people. However, after Israel declared its independence, the term Palestinian fell into disuse, as we said earlier, but both in its ethnological and legal senses. What the Arabs did was to simply relabel the now abandoned term Palestinian and state that they are the Palestinians in both its ethnological and legal aspects. Not only that, but practically the entire international community has bought into this deception and now accept it as fact. It is exactly as Newt Gingrich said a number of years ago. He said, "I think that we've had an invented Palestinian people who are in fact Arabs, and who were historically part of the Arab community." Zohar Mohsin, former member of the executive committee of this so-called PLO, candidly admitted this deception when he stated the following in an interview on March 31st, 1977. "A Palestinian people does not exist. The establishment of a Palestinian state is just the means for continuing our struggle against Israel and for Arab unity. Since Golda Meir denies the existence of a Palestinian people, I claim that such a people does exist, and that there is a difference between it and the Jordanian people. However, in actual fact, there is no difference between Jordanians, Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese. We all belong to the Arab people. It is only for political reasons that we carefully stress our Palestinian identity, for it is in the national interest of the Arabs to encourage a separate Palestinian identity to counter Zionism. Yes, the existence of a separate Palestinian identity serves only tactical purposes." Now you may need to watch this video a second time simply because of the massive disinformation campaign and brainwashing that has been taking place throughout the world for the last 60 years. It is indeed correct that truth is often stranger than fiction. As Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf, "At first the claims of the propaganda were so impudent that people thought it insane. Later it got on people's nerves, and in the end it was believed." In part 5 of this video series, we will examine how the government of the State of Israel has undermined the sovereignty of the Jewish people over the land of Israel, that is, over Palestine.